At the SEAL training gym, the janitor James Hayes moves quietly, overlooked, even mocked. Old man a recruit, Snickers. No one notices the disciplined stride, the precise hands, until a faded tattoo peeks out from under his collar. SEAL Team 6. They thought James Hayes was just a janitor. What they didn't know. He once led warriors through Kandahar's hell and brought them home. Stick around, because when Senior Instructor Mason Thompson realizes who's been silently walking these halls, and the recruits discover the legend in their midst, the entire command structure will be forced to remember: true power doesn't wear a uniform. It never had to. Don't forget to drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time you found this video. Also hit that subscribe button Senior Instructor Mason Thompson's. Fingers traced the polished surface of his instructor's badge, his authority radiating through the SEAL training compound's security room. The morning light caught the metallic sheen as he watched the janitor through multiple camera feeds, each screen confirming what his instincts screamed. There was no mistaking that measured grace, that warrior's rhythm disguised beneath civilian clothes. "Sir, the recruits are assembled for morning PT." His assistant called through the intercom, but Mason Thompson's eyes remained fixed on the surveillance footage. The supposed janitor moved with a predator's economy, each motion deliberately understated. 17 years of identifying elite operators had honed Mason Thompson's instincts to a razor's edge. The security feed captured the moment perfectly. The janitor reaching high to clean a window, his collar shifting just enough to reveal that distinctive tattoo. Mason Thompson's breath caught as the familiar SEAL Team 6 marking became visible. His own badge seemed to burn against his chest as forgotten memories of Kandahar flooded back. "Nobody here is who they seem," Mason Thompson muttered, zooming the camera in as the recruits filed past the janitor, their eyes sliding over him like he was invisible. The irony made Mason Thompson's jaw clench. These fresh-faced candidates dreaming of becoming elite operators, completely blind to the legend in their midst. A recruit accidentally bumped into the janitor's mop bucket. "Sorry, old-timer," the young man called out dismissively. Mason Thompson watched the janitor's reaction through the feed. That microsecond tensing of muscles, the instantly suppressed combat-ready stance. To untrained eyes, nothing had happened. To Mason Thompson, it was like watching a tiger pretend to be a house cat. The weight of the instructor's badge grew heavier as Mason Thompson's mind raced through possibilities. Why would a former SEAL team commander be maintaining this cover? What mission could possibly require such deep concealment? The questions burned, but asking them openly could shatter whatever operation was in play. His phone buzzed. Someone had captured that brief interaction with the recruit and posted it online. Already speculation was building. Hidden Hero was trending with comments questioning why an older janitor moved like a trained fighter. Mason Thompson's thumb hovered over the share button, 17 years of military discipline warring with the urge to reveal the truth. The security feed showed the janitor disappearing down a corridor, that familiar ghost-like movement stirring memories of another time. Another mission. The echo of his footsteps faded like whispers from the past. Mason Thompson's reflection stared back from the black screen, his instructor's badge gleaming like an accusation. "Type honor if you've ever overlooked someone's true worth," Mason Thompson whispered to his reflection, the words tasting like redemption and regret. Could this simple janitor truly be the legendary Commander Hayes? And if so, what storm was brewing that required such a warrior to walk among them in disguise? The questions coiled in Mason Thompson's mind as he watched the empty corridor, remembering another time when assumptions and appearances had nearly cost them everything. The morning light caught his instructor's badge again, and Mason Thompson made his decision. Some secrets needed to stay buried, but others demanded to be brought into the light. The real question was, which kind was he facing now? Senior Instructor Mason Thompson's polished badge caught the morning light as he strode through the compound's corridors, his growing obsession with the mysterious janitor gnawing at his thoughts. 15 years of experience screening SEAL candidates had honed his instincts, and something about those calloused hands working the maintenance equipment kept him awake at night. The standard background check had hit a wall of black ink, redactions so thorough they might as well have been written in invisible ink. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson knew bureaucratic stonewalling when he saw it, and this was different. This was the kind of classified file reserved for operators whose very existence needed to be erased. "Sir, your 0900 training session is starting." His assistant called out, but Senior Instructor Mason Thompson barely registered the words. His mind replayed the way the janitor had methodically disassembled that broken generator yesterday. Textbook military precision, each movement economical and practiced. Those weren't a civilian's hands. The memory of Kandahar surfaced unbidden, that hellish firefight in Aero 8 when their unit was pinned down. The legendary commander who appeared like a ghost in the chaos leading them to safety through a storm of bullets. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson fingered his instructor's badge, remembering how that same commander had disappeared afterward, leaving only whispered stories in his wake. "Look at the janitor cleaning up the recruit's mess again," sneered one of the younger instructors passing by. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson's jaw clenched at the dismissive tone. These cocky kids had no idea what real operators looked like, the ones who'd shed their egos along with their blood in the sand. His growing suspicion felt like a weight in his chest. Could it really be him? The timing fit. The commander had vanished from active duty around the same time this unassuming janitor appeared. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson found himself studying security footage late into the night, watching the way the man moved through the compound with an operator's situational awareness, always positioning himself with clear sightlines to exits. Have you ever faced someone whose very presence questioned everything you thought you knew? Senior Instructor Mason Thompson whispered to his reflection in the bathroom mirror, his instructor's badge suddenly feeling heavy against his chest. Drop one in the comments if you've encountered someone who shattered your assumptions. The scientific research was clear. Elite operators developed distinctive behavioral patterns that became practically hardwired. The way they entered rooms, how they handled equipment, their economy of movement, these weren't things you could fake. And this janitor checked every box in ways that made Senior Instructor Mason Thompson's combat-trained instincts sing with recognition. As he watched the man quietly maintaining the compound's equipment, Senior Instructor Mason Thompson remembered his own instructor's words from years ago. "The most dangerous operators are the ones who've learned to disappear in plain sight." The recruit's laughter echoed down the hallway as they passed completely blind to the warrior in their midst. His fingers traced the edge of his instructor's badge, the symbol of authority that suddenly felt hollow in the presence of such carefully crafted humility. The truth was starting to crystallize. Sometimes the greatest heroes chose invisibility, finding purpose in service rather than glory. Share this video if you've ever discovered something extraordinary hiding in plain sight. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson murmured, knowing this was just the beginning of a much deeper mystery. One that would force him to question everything he thought he knew about strength leadership and the true meaning of service. The weight of discovery pressed against his chest as he watched the janitor methodically work his movements, telling a story that only those who'd walked the warrior's path could read. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson knew he couldn't unsee what he'd noticed, and somehow he suspected the janitor knew exactly what he'd figured out. Officer Mason Thompson stared at his instructor's badge, its polished surface now clouded by doubt. The fire incident kept replaying in his mind, each detail a mockery of his carefully maintained authority. The way Hayes had moved, fluid, precise, commanding. It violated everything Thompson had assumed about the quiet janitor who'd haunted his halls these past months. His fingers traced the badge's edges as security footage played on his office monitor. Frame by frame, Hayes's movements betrayed years of tactical training. Thompson's jaw clenched watching the janitor execute a perfect recovery drill he himself had taught to SEAL candidates. The sprinkler's steady drone filled his office, a rhythmic reminder of his growing unease. "Computer freeze frame," Mason Thompson barked, leaning closer to the screen. "Cross-reference personnel records, Kandahar deployment 2008. His hands trembled slightly, an unfamiliar sensation for someone who prided himself on iron control. The system churned through data as whispers from the training floor drifted through his door. "Did you see how Hayes handled that fire? Just like the manual says?" "No way, he's just a janitor." Thompson's authority was bleeding away with every murmured observation. He could feel it in the way his advanced class had watched him during morning briefing, their eyes holding questions they hadn't dared voice yet. The respect he'd built through fear and intimidation was cracking like sun-baked paint. His phone buzzed, another message from command requesting his presence. They'd want explanations about the fire, about Hayes, about the growing rumors. Thompson's reflection in the window showed a man he barely recognized, uncertainty etched in lines he couldn't hide. A knock at his door made him start. "Sir." Lieutenant Chen stood in the doorway, hesitation visible in her stance. "The recruits are asking about Hayes, about his background check." Thompson dismissed her with a sharp wave, but her words hung in the air like smoke. Background check. He'd run one himself when Hayes first arrived, hadn't he? Or had he simply assumed someone else had handled it? The thought sent ice through his veins. The security footage continued its damning playback. Hayes moving through the smoke, every step calculated, every motion efficient. Thompson watched himself in the background, barking orders that Hayes had anticipated seconds before they were given. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't been in command of that situation at all. His phone buzzed again. This time a message from an unknown number, Kandahar. "Remember the hospital evacuation?" Thompson's heart rate spiked. Only someone who'd been there would know about that night. About the commander who'd led them through hell while Thompson, then a junior officer, had frozen in panic. The badge felt heavy in his hands now. Its weight seemed to multiply with each new revelation, each crack in his carefully constructed facade. He'd built his reputation on being the toughest instructor in the program, on breaking recruits down to rebuild them. But Hayes was something else entirely. A commotion outside drew his attention. Recruits were gathering around someone's phone faces, illuminated by its glow. Thompson's stride faltered as he approached, catching fragments of hushed conversation. "That's definitely him." "SEAL Team 8, Afghanistan." Thompson must have known. His world contracted to a single point as he glimpsed the screen, a classified mission photo redacted but clear enough. There in the background stood a younger Hayes commander's insignia, visible on his dusty uniform. The same Hayes who now cleaned their floors and watched silently from the shadows. The badge slipped from Thompson's fingers, clattering on the floor like a fallen crown. In its reflection, he saw everything he'd built beginning to unravel. The authority he'd wielded like a weapon, the fear he'd used to control, all of it dissolving in the wake of a simple truth. A legend had been hiding in plain sight, and Mason Thompson had been too blind with power to see it. Have you ever watched your empire crumble from the inside out? Drop 2. If you've felt your control slip away. The fire alarms had stopped, but Thompson could still hear them ringing in his ears, a warning he'd ignored for too long. As he bent to retrieve his badge, he caught Hayes watching from the end of the corridor. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Thompson saw something there that terrified him more than any loss of control. Recognition. Hayes knew. He'd always known, and soon everyone else would too. "The weight of my badge feels different tonight as I swipe into the empty gym." The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows, and there he is, just a janitor to everyone else, methodically pushing his mop across the floor. But I know better now. My heart pounds as I watch James Hayes, the legendary ghost of Kandahar, maintaining his humble cover. Kandahar, 2008. I say, my voice echoing in the cavernous space. The words hang heavy between us. Hayes doesn't stop mopping, but I notice the subtle shift in his posture, the same ready stance I've seen 1,000 times in combat. The rhythmic squeak of his mop continues, but there's a new tension in his movements. The AC unit drones overhead, a white noise masking the weight of unspoken history between us. 38 men. I continue my voice tight. 38 of our brothers you pulled out of that ambush, and now you're here pushing a mop while I bark orders at recruits who don't know the first thing about real sacrifice. The mop stops. Hayes straightens, and for the first time I see the commander I remember, the man whose mere presence could steady a platoon. Every job has honor, Mason, he says quietly, even cleaning floors. My throat constricts. The men deserve to know who's really walking these halls. Your legacy, my legacy. Hayes turns, fixing me with that penetrating gaze that could always see right through bullshit. My legacy isn't in medals or stories, Mason. It's in the lives those 38 men went on to live. It's in every recruit who learns to put the team before themselves. The security camera in the corner blinks its red eye, recording this moment. I step closer, lowering my voice. Sir, with all due respect, you're wasted here. These recruits need to learn humility. Hayes cuts me off, his voice carrying the same quiet authority it did in the Hindu Kush. Something I'm teaching every day with this mop. Question is, Mason, have you learned it? The words hit me like a physical blow. I think of how I've been running this training program focusing on physical achievements, on breaking records. Have I forgotten the most important lessons Hayes taught us? Standing here facing the greatest commander I've ever known as he chooses to serve in silence, I realize how far I've strayed from what really matters in leadership. The AC cycles off, leaving us in profound silence. Hayes resumes mopping, but his words continue to echo in my mind. I watch him work this living legend who chooses anonymity, and something shifts in my understanding of true leadership. The next class starts tomorrow, I say finally. Would you consider sharing some of your wisdom, not as Commander Hayes, but as who you are now? He pauses, considering. Sometimes the best lessons come from unexpected places, Mason. Maybe that's why I'm here. I nod my badge, suddenly feeling lighter. As I turn to leave, I hear him say, "The floor still needs finishing, Senior Instructor. Care to help?" Without hesitation, I remove my badge, set it aside, and reach for the spare mop. Type humble warrior, if you understand, true leadership isn't about rank or recognition. In the empty gym, under humming fluorescent lights, 2 decorated warriors push mops across the floor, rediscovering what it means to serve with honor. Using Senior Instructor Mason Thompson's exact name throughout, here's the ultimate truth section. The morning sun pierced through the training compound windows as Senior Instructor Mason Thompson stood frozen, watching James Hayes methodically move his mop across the floor. The badge on Thompson's chest felt heavier than ever before its polished surface catching the light and reflecting his own transformed expression. All this time I strutted around here like I owned these halls. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson whispered to himself, his voice thick with remorse. The rhythmic sound of Hayes's mop against the floor echoed through the corridor. Swish, pause, swish. A humble symphony that now carried profound meaning. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson approached his former superior slowly, each step weighted with the gravity of his realization. "Commander Hayes, James," he managed, his voice cracking. "I've spent months treating you like—" The words died in his throat as Hayes continued his work, dignified and focused as always. The memory of Kandahar flooded back, not of glory or medals, but of Hayes carrying wounded men through gunfire, never seeking recognition. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson's hands trembled as he unpinned his instructor's badge, the metal warm from his chest. True leadership was right in front of me wearing a janitor's uniform, while I paraded around demanding respect. A group of recruits passed by, their boots clicking against the floor. They saluted Senior Instructor Mason Thompson out of habit, but his eyes remained fixed on Hayes. "I understand now," Thompson said louder this time. "You didn't hide your identity out of shame. You did it because the mission, the teaching, matters more than the recognition." Hayes paused, his mopping, meeting Senior Instructor Mason Thompson's gaze with quiet intensity. "The greatest leaders," Thompson continued, his voice carrying through the hall, "are often those who seek no spotlight at all." The morning light strengthened, casting long shadows across the compound floor. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson placed his badge on the nearby window ledge, where it caught the sun's rays. "From now on, I'll teach differently. Leadership isn't about rank or recognition. It's about service, humility, and the quiet impact we leave on others. Comment below with humble hero if this story changed your perspective on true leadership." Hayes resumed his mopping, the steady rhythm, now a meditation on selfless service. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson watched him work, understanding that his own transformation would become part of Hayes's legacy, not as a decorated SEAL commander, but as a janitor who taught the most powerful lesson of all: share this story. Senior Instructor Mason Thompson whispered to the recruits gathering nearby, "Not because it's about a hidden hero, but because it reminds us that true greatness doesn't need a spotlight to change lives." Drop 3 if you believe in the power of humble leadership. As the morning light filled the compound, Senior Instructor Mason Thompson's badge remained on the window ledge, transformed from a symbol of authority into a reminder that sometimes the greatest leaders are those who choose to serve in silence.